Heart stories. Acts of kindness across America. In a world that often feels divided, stories of human kindness remind us of our shared humanity. From bustling city streets to quiet rural towns, Americans continue to demonstrate extraordinary compassion in ordinary moments. These are the stories that restore faith, inspire hope, and prove that kindness is alive and thriving across the United States. The cafe conversation. Sarah noticed him first, the way he sat alone at the outdoor table, checking his watch repeatedly. She was walking her newborn daughter Emma around the neighborhood, trying to get her to sleep, when she saw the dejection in his shoulders. Something about his posture reminded her of her brother during his darkest days. "Excuse me," she found herself saying, approaching his table. "Are you okay?" David looked up, startled. He'd been waiting for a job interview that had been cancelled at the last minute, another rejection in a string of disappointments since being laid off 6 months ago. He was about to brush off the stranger's concern when he saw genuine care in her eyes. "I've been better," he admitted. What followed was an hour-long conversation that changed both their lives. Sarah shared her own struggles as a new mother, feeling isolated and overwhelmed. David talked about his fears of not being able to provide for his family. By the time Emma had fallen asleep in her mother's arms, they'd exchanged contact information and David had a lead on a position at Sarah's husband's company. 6 months later, David got the job. Sarah had found a trusted friend and babysitter. Their families still meet at that same cafe every month, a tradition born from one stranger's willingness to ask if another was okay. The grocery store guardian angel. At 82, Margaret Chen had been shopping at the same Safeway in Oakland for 30 years. She knew every aisle, every cashier's name, and exactly when the produce was freshest. What she didn't expect was becoming the store's unofficial guardian angel. It started when she noticed a young father struggling to afford diapers and formula while his toddler tugged at his coat. Without thinking, Margaret stepped forward and quietly handed the cashier her card. "Put his items on mine," she whispered. Word spread quickly through the store staff about the elderly woman who paid for strangers' groceries. But Margaret's kindness went deeper than money. She started arriving early to help elderly customers reach high shelves. She'd sit with crying children while their parents handled emergencies. She kept a purse full of snacks for hungry kids and tissues for overwhelmed mothers. The store manager, Tony, began to notice that customer complaints dropped significantly on Margaret's shopping days. Stressed parents seemed calmer. Elderly customers lingered longer, chatting with Margaret by the pharmacy. The store felt warmer, more community-oriented. When Margaret had a mild heart attack and was hospitalized for a week, something beautiful happened. The entire store rallied. Customers who had never spoken to each other began helping each other reach items, holding doors, making small talk in checkout lines. They had learned kindness by watching Margaret, and her spirit lived on even in her absence. Margaret returned to find dozens of cards and a small shrine of flowers in her honor. "We just wanted to take care of you like you take care of us," explained Sophia, a young mother whose twins Margaret had often entertained while Sophia shopped. Today, at 85, Margaret still shops at the same store. The management has given her an honorary badge and her own parking spot. She's trained a network of grocery angels, volunteers who help customers in need. Her simple acts of kindness created a ripple effect that transformed an entire community. The teacher who saw potential. In the industrial town of Youngstown, Ohio, Lincoln Elementary was not where teachers went to advance their careers. The school served primarily low-income families, many facing challenges that extended far beyond the classroom. Test scores were low, resources were limited, and hope was often in short supply. Then came Ms. Rodriguez. Fresh out of college with a degree in education, Carmen Rodriguez could have taught anywhere. Instead, she chose Lincoln Elementary because she believed every child deserved someone who saw their potential. Her first year was brutal. She spent her own money on supplies, stayed late every night planning lessons, and went home many days wondering if she was making any difference at all. The breakthrough came with Jamal, a fourth grader who hadn't spoken in class for weeks after his father was deployed overseas. While other students worked on math problems, Carmen noticed Jamal drawing intricate geometric patterns in his notebook margins. Instead of scolding him, she paused the lesson. "Jamal, can you show everyone what you're working on?" Hesitantly, he held up his notebook. Carmen gasped. The patterns were mathematical art, complex and beautiful. "Class, Jamal has discovered something amazing about geometry. Can you teach us about these patterns?" For the first time all year, Jamal smiled and began to speak. His artistic approach to mathematics opened up new ways of teaching that reached students who had previously struggled. Carmen began incorporating art into every subject, and test scores started rising. But Carmen's impact went beyond academics. She learned her students' stories, who didn't have breakfast at home, who was dealing with family stress, who needed extra encouragement. She started a weekend backpack program, sending food home with hungry students. She organized coat drives and created a classroom library with books that reflected her students' diverse backgrounds. When Marcus, a talented writer, mentioned he'd never been to a library, Carmen spent her Saturday taking him and 3 classmates to the main branch downtown. When Aisha showed interest in science but had never seen a real laboratory, Carmen arranged field trips to the local college. 5 years later, Carmen's classroom had a waiting list. Parents requested her specifically, knowing she saw something special in every child. Her former students, now in high school, still visited regularly. Many of them spoke of becoming teachers themselves, wanting to impact lives the way Ms. Rodriguez had impacted theirs. The most powerful testament to Carmen's influence came at graduation. Jamal, now in 8th grade and heading to high school on an art scholarship, stood at the podium. Ms. Rodriguez didn't just teach me math and reading. She taught me that someone believed in me. That made me believe in myself. Carmen still teaches at Lincoln Elementary. Her classroom walls are covered with college acceptance letters, wedding invitations, and baby announcements from former students. She's proof that one person who truly sees and nurtures potential can change the trajectory of countless lives. The neighbor who cared. When Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston in 2017, the world watched as ordinary citizens became heroes. But some of the most profound acts of kindness happened quietly, between neighbors who barely knew each other. Robert Martinez lived in a modest ranch house in northeast Houston. At 67, he was a retired mechanic who kept to himself, tending his small garden and fixing neighbors' cars when asked. He knew the family next door had young children but had never spoken to them beyond polite waves. As floodwaters began rising rapidly that Sunday night, Robert heard crying from next door. Through his window, he saw the Nguyen family, parents and 3 young children, trapped on their roof as water surrounded their house. Without hesitation, he grabbed his small fishing boat from the garage. "I'm coming to get you," he shouted over the storm. The rescue took 3 trips through dangerous, debris-filled water. First the children, then Mrs. Nguyen, finally Mr. Nguyen and their elderly dog. Robert brought them all to his slightly elevated house, which was still dry. What happened next surprised everyone, including Robert himself. As word spread that he was helping families evacuate, more people arrived at his door. His house became an unofficial shelter. Robert opened his doors to 23 strangers over 4 days, the Nishida family from down the street, elderly Mrs. Thompson who lived alone, the Johnsons whose baby was due any day, college students stranded far from campus. With no power and limited supplies, the group had to work together. Mrs. Nguyen, who owned a small restaurant, organized meal preparation with their combined food. The college students entertained the children. Mr. Nishida, a doctor, provided medical care for an elderly man who had run out of hard medication. Mrs. Thompson, a retired teacher, organized makeshift lessons to keep the kids occupied. For 4 days, strangers became family. They shared stories, fears, and hopes. Language barriers dissolved as people communicated through gestures and kindness. Children who had been traumatized by the storm began laughing again, playing games invented by teenagers they'd just met. When the waters finally receded and families could return to assessing their damage, something beautiful had formed. The group didn't want to separate. They organized weekly dinners, rotating between houses as they were rebuilt. The children, who had been through trauma together, remained close friends. Robert, the quiet mechanic who thought he was just helping neighbors, had created a community. The families still gather monthly for potluck dinners. When Mrs. Thompson needed surgery, the group organized care schedules. When the Johnsons' baby was finally born, healthy and happy, 22 adults considered themselves honorary aunts and uncles. "I just wanted to help my neighbors," Robert often says. "I never expected to gain so much family." The house on Maple Street still bears small water stains on the walls, reminders of the storm that brought them together. But more prominently displayed are photos of weddings, graduations, and celebrations of the extended family that formed during those 4 life-changing days. The bus driver's daily kindness. Every weekday morning at 6:47 a.m., Charlie Washington